However, in a swift and decisive response, all missiles were successfully intercepted by the Indian Armed Forces. According to defense sources, the attack was repelled with zero casualty, showcasing India's robust defense preparedness and real-time operational readiness. Striking similarity to Hamas tactics, visuals emerging from Jammu show multiple low-cost rapid-fire projectiles, drawing chilling parallels with Hamas-style rocket attacks on Israel. The Pakistani army is operating more like a terror organization with tactics resembling those of the Hamas. Now, this is further supported by recent intelligence reports suggesting a meeting between ISI and Hamas operatives in Pakistan occupied Kashmir or POK last month. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Thursday. As you're watching DD India Newshour, we're getting the latest updates on the escalating tensions from the Pakistani side and how India has repelled and destroyed all those projectiles launched by Pakistan targeting Indian infrastructure and cities. And joining me for more on this developing story is my colleague Nandita Dagar. Nandita, first of all, explain to our viewers who are joining us from around the world, what exactly has Pakistan been up to?
Yes, 8:45 Indian Standard Time, Ramesh. We started getting reports that Pakistan they had fired projectiles, and these included 8 missiles and our drones also, and they were all neutralized by our air defense systems of the Indian Air Force. Now, for example, the bases that they had targeted were Satwari and they were all Samba, RS Pura, Satwari, Arnia. These are all in Jammu region, and they were all intercepted by S-400 air defense systems of the Indian Air Force. Then we saw that the entire international border, we see that there is a line of control separating Jammu and Kashmir with the Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Along that and the international border in Jammu and the the entire frontage, the border states of beginning from Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, we saw that Pakistan resorted to heavy firing in Jammu area, as well as firing projectiles, small drones, kamikaze type of drones along these border states, and therefore an air raid sirens went off, and several cities on the border were therefore plunged into darkness as a blackout or power cuts were ordered. That happened, and having said that, India has retaliated appropriately when Pakistan has not used small arms. It is using heavy mortar shells as well as heavy machine guns and artillery shells in Poonch, Rajouri, Aknoor areas, and the Indian Army is responding appropriately. That is, it is giving a befitting response. Also, Ramesh, I want to clear some misleading in the fog of war and in this current age of social media. The enemy country always tries to disseminate and misleading and false information which can lead to panic in the country. I want to dispel some rumors. There are reports that some social media handles are claiming that tanks have been mobilized. That is absolutely false. No tanks have been mobilized. Yes, the Jammu and Pathankot air bases were targeted with missiles, and these missiles were downed by our S-400 and other air interceptors. But there are also reports floating in the media that in Pakistani media that there were a fidain or a suicide bombing at Jammu and Pathankot. That is, let me clarify, that is absolutely false. It is absolutely wrong. It is baseless and misleading. Also, we are getting reports that the Indian Army has mobilized several of its own artillery positions along the borders, and in the LOC and the IB area, the Indian Army is also shelling as well as engaging in heavy mortar fire because of what Pakistan had done. You heard the press conference of the Foreign Ministry today, Ramesh, where our Foreign Secretary, Mr. Vikram Misri, had made it absolutely clear that India had the right to defend itself when 26 innocent tourists were killed in Pahalgam, and that is why that action was initiated on the night of 6th to 7th of May when terrorist camps and their launch pads in Bahawalpur, Muzaffarabad and 9 locations were targeted, and therefore India had made it clear even then that it did not wish to climb the escalatory ladder. India's response was measured and did not target any military facility. No civilian collateral casualty happened. It was only terrorists, including the family of Maulana Masood Azhar, who is the head of Jaish-e-Mohammed, his family, which was in Bahawalpur and other places which were targeted, and therefore it was to not escalate is completely in Pakistan's court. And in the press briefing that was held today, that is on 8th of May, again, our Foreign Secretary said that when Pakistan had targeted 15 cities with projectiles, including drones and missiles, these designs were again thwarted. These evil designs were again thwarted by our alert and vigil defense forces, by our Air Force and Army installations. These drones were downed, and then to save the face, because Pakistan, as you very well know, just like anybody who reads newspapers knows, that it is the Pakistani army which is running the Pakistani government. The Pakistani government, the Prime Minister, whether be it Shahbaz Sharif or Imran Khan or any Prime Minister, is a powerless Prime Minister. It is the army which calls the shots. And if the army is shown to be weak, then it loses credibility amongst the people of Pakistan, and then it will lose its cash flow. It loses the luxurious lifestyle and the affluence that it enjoys. So to remain relevant, the Pakistani army has conducted this escalatory, has pushed this, stepped up on this escalatory ladder, which we saw when 8:45 we started getting reports of the Pakistani projectiles, including missiles and drones, across the line of control and the international border. Of course, schools and colleges have been shut in Jammu. Let me tell you that is the northernmost state for our international viewers. It is divided by the line of control. It's a very sensitive state. This is the state where that barbaric, inhuman, absolutely uncivilized execution style, on point blank execution of 26 people was carried out by these terrorists. The world knows that this terrorist, Pakistan is the fountainhead of terrorism. The Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif admitting, in fact, absolutely confessing to a international channel that they have, and I quote him, "We've been doing this dirty work for the US for years now, for decades now, and for UK too." This is what he had to say. Now, for who the Pakistanis have been doing the dirty work is not India's concern, but when India's citizens were targeted, and when our Prime Minister vowed that India will avenge the lives of these innocent people, and the terrorists will not find a safe haven, even their masters, their handlers will have to pay. India came good on that promise. And now we see that Pakistan, to save face, is carrying out these retaliatory attacks and also carrying out misinformation. Let me tell you that one very important fact that we have come to know from our defense sources, Ramesh, the Hamas second-rung leadership, not the top leadership, but the second-rung leadership met with the second-rung leadership of the Inter-Services Intelligence, or ISI, which is the spy agency of Pakistan, in POK, in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, in April. It is in April that the Pakistani army chief, who is actually a shame on the word army chief, because the kind of language that he used in his speech, the communal and the absolutely deplorable language that he used, and this was followed by the terrorist attack on 22nd of April. So you can just imagine that currently our Foreign Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, is also on hotline with the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaya Kallas. He's spoken to the US Secretary of State, effectively the US Foreign Minister, Mr. Marco Rubio, and they've all, in unequivocal terms, unambiguously, apart from showing, asking both the countries, India and Pakistan, to show restraint it is notable, it is very, very important to note, Ramesh, that these Western countries are now also saying that India has a right to defend itself, and Marco Rubio's statement, he clearly says, ask Pakistan to put an end to terrorism. Ramesh?
Indeed, Nandita, let me pause here and bring our viewers up to speed once again. For the benefit of viewers joining us, you're watching the DD India Newshour, the latest on the Pakistani hostilities targeted at India, and India giving a befitting response to the Pakistani provocations. Let me quickly again recap the developments for you. First and foremost, India successfully intercepting Pakistani missiles. 8 missiles from Pakistan were directed at Satwari, Samba, Araspura and Arnia, point number 1. Number 2, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken to many world leaders in the last several hours, including but not limited to the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, as well as European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. And for his part, Minister Jaishankar underlining that India's targeted and measured response to cross-border terrorism is continuing as we speak. Point number 3, to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest, India earlier in the day neutralized the air defense system in Lahore, Pakistan, in response to Pakistan targeting military assets in 15 Indian cities last night. And last but not the least, India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar warning that any military attack on India will get a firm, severe response. And the Foreign Secretary, for his part, displaying an image of a state funeral, no less, for slain terrorists in Pakistan, further exposing the Pakistani state's links with terrorism. As my colleague Nandita is reporting, we've seen Pakistani drones and missiles being targeted at Indian cities, installations across both the line of control as well as the international border. Pakistan, as always, resorting to misinformation and disinformation. Nandita reporting there that no tanks have been mobilized. Point number 1. Please, viewers, stay tuned to DD India for the authentic and authoritative information. Don't be misled by propaganda, false news, fake news, misinformation or disinformation. Nandita also reporting that all missiles targeted at India have been intercepted, have been shot down with 0 casualties. Also, as Nandita was reporting there, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in India holding a press conference earlier in the day, saying, among other things, that India will not be the first to initiate or start an attack, but when provoked, when threatened, when attacked, India will give a befitting response to Pakistan and Pakistani designs. Also, Nandita reporting there that this attack or attempted strikes by Pakistan resemble very closely with the style, the MO, the modus operandi and the tactics adopted by Hamas, and that the Pakistani army today resembles more like a terror organization. And to many a mind in India tonight as we speak, Pakistan is a fit case for being designated as a terrorist state, as a state sponsor of terrorism. Right, if I can go back to my colleague Nandita one more time on this broadcast to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest from the front lines as we speak. Nandita, talk to us a bit more about the Indian response. From where all did we retaliate, and what has been the sum and substance of India's retaliation to those provocations from Pakistan?
Yes, Ramesh, you enumerated these points very, very clearly for our international audiences who are watching DD India. And I also want to reiterate that our army sources have told us that some of the projectiles which have fallen in places like Jaisalmer, in places like Sri Ganga Nagar, all these places along the border where these projectiles have fallen, and the army of course is collecting them and as evidence, And they say that these are such rudimentary rockets, that they are the kind of rockets that Hamas manufactures in its underground tunnels, which shows that the Pakistani army is not very technologically advanced. It might have the JF-15s and the JF-16s, which are actually, donated to it by China, just like a beggar is donated to, because we all know how, in what financial crunch and at the verge of bankruptcy Pakistan stands. Financial, not just moral bankruptcy, but financial bankruptcy that Pakistan stands. And on multiple fora, when India has raised the issue of terrorism at SCO or even at the UN Security Council, the only nation which has come to Pakistan's defense is China. Whenever India has tried to even get any terrorist such as Maulana Masood Azhar designated as a terrorist, the only stumbling block has been China. And that is why it is the only entity which is flourishing in Pakistan right now is the army. It is the army generals which are filthy rich. It is the army generals which are living in palatial homes. It is the army generals who are enjoying a very lavish lifestyle. And when they say they have provided protective custody or house arrest to Hafiz Saeed, who is the founder of Lashkar-e-Toiba and the mastermind of the 26/11 terrorist attacks in Mumbai in 2008, it is not a house arrest. He is free to move. He goes to mosques. He can give speeches. He can give sermons on Fridays. He is absolutely free to move. We saw how Maulana Masood Azhar is roaming freely. We saw how yesterday when India targeted the Bahawalpur terrorist camp, Maulana Masood Azhar's family members were killed, and we saw Pakistani army men in uniform mourning and these terrorists being given a state funeral. So what more do you need? And just as I know, you also know that the West is absolutely well aware of the fountainhead of terrorism that Pakistan is. And it did not just wake up on 1st of May 2011 when Osama bin Laden was captured in this raid by the US Navy SEALs in Abbottabad. Now Abbottabad is just a stone's throw away from the Pakistani military academy. It is like finding Osama bin Laden in our National Defense Academy in Pune, just like that. So even Osama bin Laden was being sheltered by the ISI, being protected by the ISI, and this is a hydra-headed monster where there are wheels within wheels of the ISI. The left hand, but it is clear that it's the political entity of that the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Minister, these are people who are powerless. The army calls the shots. And to save its face, after India targeted the air defense systems in Lahore, today in the afternoon, it's today only, it's 8th of May, and in today afternoon when Lahore air defense system, their interceptors went up in a plume of smoke and fire, in a ball of fire, the Pakistani army, if it appears to be powerless, it will lose its relevance. It will lose the clout that it enjoys within the Pakistani, not just the public, but also the Pakistani government. It will collapse. So in several fora, we have seen the Financial Action Task Force. Pakistan was just forced from the blacklist. It came into the grey list, and now with it does not even have foreign reserves to last several months, probably last a year even. But it does not even have the technology apart from these high fighter jets, which are 5th generation fighter jets. And these are unconfirmed reports. We have no idea whether the Chinese fighter jets, the JF-16 and JF-15, they are actually working or not, or whether they are operable by the Pakistani pilots or not. We do not know that. But they do enjoy the donation of this hardware, military hardware from China, which is Iron Brother, which it calls, and it suits China because by 2047, India is poised to become the world's preeminent military, economic, cultural superpower. China obviously sees it as a threat. And if India and Pakistan are mired into an escalatory conflict or an asymmetrical, even bleeding by 1,000 cuts, and then India responds and then Pakistan escalates, then it suits China. So therefore, we see that China, if you are a very knowledgeable scholar of foreign affairs, you must have noted the reaction of China to the Pahalgam terrorist attack. You must have noted its reaction to India's response and the action that India carried out. And now just note the words. Did you imagine, did anybody of us imagine 10 years back or 15 years back that US and UK would come out in support of India, actually calling Pakistan to end its funding, abetting, training and arming terrorists? We had never imagined. Just imagine in the 1990s, any US foreign head of state, UK or any Western head of state used to come to India, they would also club that visit with the New Delhi visit with the visit to Islamabad. And when any visit to Islamabad with New Delhi, any Secretary of State also would not just visit New Delhi like that, they would also visit Pakistan. So this was a balancing act that they had to carry out. But now we see that for the past 10 to 15 years, we are seeing that the world is actually waking up, and actually not just, it had woken up long back, but it is actually voicing it in unambiguous terms. You read the statement issued by Marco Rubio's telephonic conversation with our foreign minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and you will see the last line says that it calls, apart from, of course, advising both the nations to exercise restraint and to not escalate, the last line ends with saying that Pakistan must end its support to terrorism. Who had imagined that could happen? Ramesh, am I audible?
To you momentarily. Hello? Yes, we can hear you. Do stay on. I'll come back to you in a minute. Let me quickly again, for the benefit of viewers joining us from India and around the world, recap the developments for you. But before that, let me pull up some more news coming your way, viewers. Earlier in the day, India's Minister Jaishankar warned that India has no intention to escalate, but if attacked, India will retaliate and Pakistan will be met with a very, very strong response. Take a listen.
Visiting India at a time when we are responding to a particularly barbaric terrorist attack on 22nd April in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. This attack compelled us to respond on 7th May by striking at cross-border terrorist infrastructure. Our response was targeted and measured. It is not our intention to escalate the situation. However, if there are military attacks on us, there should be no doubt that it will be met with a very, very firm response. As a neighbor and a close partner, it is important that you have a good understanding of the situation.
Also, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke with the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio this evening. Minister Jaishankar deeply appreciated the US commitment to working with India in the fight against terrorism. He underlined India's targeted and measured response to cross-border terrorism. Minister Jaishankar said that India will firmly counter any attempts at escalation. Right, so there we go. That's the post by Minister Jaishankar on social media platform X. He said, and I am quoting him here, spoke with US Secretary Marco Rubio this evening, deeply appreciate US commitment to work with India in the fight against terrorism, underlined India's targeted and measured response to cross-border terrorism, will firmly counter any attempts at escalation, unquote. Minister Jaishankar putting out that message on social media platform X after he spoke with his American counterpart Marco Rubio. Right, let me go back to my colleague Nandita Dagar, who is joining us on the phone line once again on DD India Newshour. Nandita, we've discussed about Pakistani provocations and India's befitting response to those provocations. As you've been reporting here on DD India, we've seen India's response very categorical and very clinically executed precision strikes and response to the Pakistani actions. We've also spoken about how to combat Pakistani misinformation and disinformation campaign, especially online. And as you have been reporting here, that all missiles and projectiles fired at India from Pakistan have been intercepted and shot down with, I repeat and emphasize, with zero casualties. Also, as you mentioned, the tactics, the modus operandi, the scheme and the plan with which Pakistan is resorting to these provocations resemble very clinically and very closely, as you mentioned, Nandita, with Hamas's modus operandi. In fact, as you've been reporting here, Pakistan Army today, as we speak, resembles a terror organization. Now, you've been covering the defense beat for the longest time that I have known you, Nandita. Talk to us about the thinking, the thought process, the mindset of the man in charge of the Pakistani Army today as we speak, General Asim Munir. Some call him an Islamist with strong ideological moorings. We've seen him undertake a number of miscalculations and misadventures, including when he was the Pakistani intelligence chief. The attack in Pulwama took place, so his hands are actually stained with Indian blood, so to speak. And this, as many others point out, this is an army with a state. The Pakistani Army functions, as you mentioned, and enjoys a lavish lifestyle. We know about the various foundations, the Fauji Foundation, others, which are run like big corporates, and is led by, as I mentioned, General Asim Munir. What do you make of the Pakistani general's tactic or thinking as we speak, Nandita? What is he trying to achieve here, if at all?
Yes. Ramesh, just for being politically correct, I do not want to call him General Asim Munir. He is the terrorist mastermind Asim Munir. Asim Munir is actually there was a lot of infighting amongst the Pakistani generals when the last army chief retired, and he emerged victorious. And his claim, and he emerged victorious because he claimed to be following the Islamic jihad and the fundamentalist ideology that Maulana Masood Azhar and Hafiz Saeed and Abdul Zargar, they profess, they advocate. It was his same ideology. But we must not confuse that. We must be clear that any Pakistani general, be it Parvez Musharraf, be it Asim Munir, or anybody for that matter, whether they are Islamic fundamentalists, whether they are communal, they are all anti-India. India is a country which has one of the largest population of Muslims. So they are not just against Indian Hindus, they are against Indian Muslims also. They are anti-India. Their sole claim to the seat of power is being anti-India. And Asim Munir is a beleaguered man because he is unable to tackle insurgency in Balochistan. We saw how earlier this year there was a train that was hijacked by the Baluchi freedom fighters, and I would call them freedom fighters. I'm sorry, I wouldn't call them terrorists, just because we see the kind of insurgency that is happening in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and he is unable to quell that. He's unable to curb that. So in order to, these are distraction tactics that generals, and he's one of them, this is the standard playbook of the Pakistani army. Whenever they have to distract any unfavorable events at home, whenever they have to distract from their inefficacy or their incompetence or their failure at the policy front at home, they actually carry out terrorist attacks in India. Just remember the attack in 2008 in Mumbai.
Right.
Why was that happen? Why did that happen? It was because there was great opposition in Pakistan. It was the radical fundamentalist madrasa led clerics who had opened a front against their elected government. And to distract against that, although this is, I'm just speculating, they have to carry out terrorist attacks because Pakistan does not have the backbone or spine or the military capability to actually engage in an all-out full-scale war with India, as it has been amply demonstrated 4 times. So
Indeed.
this will always resort to proxy warfare, and Asim Munir is no different. Whether he is an Islamic fundamentalist, whether he is a communal, is actually immaterial, because just like all Pakistani army chiefs, all Pakistani generals, he is anti-India, and that is what we should be concerned about.
Indeed, Nandita, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspectives with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We'll keep coming back to you for more as we go along, but thank you very much for now. Appreciate it. Right, time to bring in our special guest joining us on this broadcast. Joining me is Captain Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation. Captain Bansal, welcome to this broadcast. What can you tell us about India's response to the latest Pakistani provocations?
See, what was made very clearly in the MEA press conference was that India's attack on terrorist outfits was in retaliation for what happened in Pahalgam.
Right.
And India did not want to escalate. And as a result, their attacks were only on the terrorist breeding grounds, terrorist nurseries where terrorists were being trained, created, and pushed into Indian territory. They did not target any military or civilian target. But Pakistan's retaliation, as you saw, the first retaliation was all against military targets, and they were, in any case, they led to a situation where those missiles which were fired at 16 places were all brought down by Indian air defense systems, and that actually showed to Pakistan the inefficacy of their offensive. Subsequently, Indian drones have actually attacked and brought air defense system of Lahore, made it out of order. Similarly, air defense system of many other cities in Pakistan were also targeted. Tonight, what we are seeing is again a fresh wave of attacks from Pakistan, which are again using shells, using drones, and using missiles that they have again targeted all along Indian border. And we need to understand that Pakistan's army probably understands that they are no match to Indian army. They cannot fight a prolonged war with Indian army. So they are following a two-pronged strategy. Because firstly, they cannot show to their domestic audience that they are buckling down. So to them, they want to show that yes, they are also strong and they are taking on the Indian army. As a result, they are retaliating with those weapons which make noise and can be seen by public at large, using missiles, using rockets, using drones, so that they can tell the public, yes, they are reacting. At the same time, they are hoping that the international community mediates and brings this conflict to a close. And that's why they keep talking about nuclear threshold, nuclear weapon states, nuclear war, nuclear conflagration. At the same time, they are targeting civilians because they want to put pressure on India so that India agrees to a ceasefire as early as possible. So that is, I think, the twin-pronged strategy. And on one hand, they are escalating because they don't want to be seen by their own domestic public as buckling down under Indian pressure. At the same time, they also realize that they don't have the wherewithal to take on India.
Indeed. Captain Bansal, I have a lot more questions to ask of you. But before that, if I may quickly ask you, Captain Bansal, you've served in the Indian Navy. Is the Indian Navy at all being pressed into action? Is it involved in Operation Sindoor as we speak, in giving a befitting response to the Pakistani provocations? What are you learning?
See, firstly, I think this would fall into the domain of operational information.
Right,
and
fair enough.
I will not delve, but suffice to say that all press conferences have made it very clear that all three services are involved and they are all mobilized. So depending on the strategy of the nation, depending on the armed forces strategy, the services will take action.
Fair enough.
As and when required.
Let me now draw your attention to another aspect or dimension of the Pakistani response that we have been noticing of late, and if reports are anything to go by, Captain Bansal, and you can throw some light on that, we are given to understand that the Pakistani MO, the Pakistani modus operandi, the tactics resemble very closely with that of the Hamas. What Hamas did, for example, on 7th October 2023 in Israel, the Pakistani army's actions or MO today resemble very closely to Hamas's modus operandi as well. In fact, some people are going to the extent of saying that the Pakistani army is a veritable terror organization. Your thoughts on this, the execution or the thought behind the Pakistani provocations, Captain Bansal?
The Pakistan army has undoubtedly gone for large-scale shelling and large-scale use of loiter drones, that with the intention of overwhelming the air defense system of a particular point or a particular place. But they have failed. Firstly, they need to understand that what Hamas tried was against Israel, a small country, and as a result, it was a small area in which they could actually overwhelm the air defense systems by the number of rockets and other projectiles which they fired. The Iron Dome got overwhelmed. The similar thing doesn't happen because Pakistan is firing that sort of a thing across the entire border. And Indian air defense system is also deployed all along the border, and I think is able to take on whatever is coming from Pakistan. We have heard reports tonight that they have targeted all the way from Jammu to Jaisalmer and even beyond. So I think Indian air defense system is taking and handling whatever Pakistan is trying to do. And I guess we will have greater clarity by tomorrow. But to the best of my knowledge, all Pakistani attempts or all Pakistani drones, etc., have been brought down. There have been no successful strike by Pakistan.
Indeed, that's what we are also learning, Captain Bansal, and thank you for pointing it out that India is suggesting that it intercepted all the Pakistani projectiles. They were shot down with, and I emphasize here, with zero casualties, as you mentioned rightly, Captain Bansal. In fact, another aspect of this discussion, if I may draw your attention to, is the amount of misinformation or disinformation being propagated or being sought to be propagated by Pakistan. We've seen this battle being fought at multiple levels, including information warfare, the cyberspace, including. What do you make of the Indian response so far, fact-checking their claims, labeling them as false, fake news, and cautioning viewers, wherever they might be, to only go by authentic, authoritative information from proper channels, including on the channel that you are now speaking?
See, I think in most of these cases, I think India has been successfully able to counter Pakistan's propaganda. I think we have been able to successfully counter propaganda. The only one issue which I think we have not been that effective is that they have been claiming that an aircraft has been brought down. Which aircraft, again, they are claiming that it's a Rafale. That's one issue which we have probably not been able to successfully counter, because even today's press conference, the reply that the Foreign Secretary gave was not very clear. He said that information will be shared as and when it becomes necessary. Now, rather than emphatically denying it. So that's one piece of information, I think, which is to some extent still making waves, especially in the international media, because if you look at BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, they are probably trying to project that. But all other Pakistan's fake narrative of bringing down 5 aircraft, targeting so many places, targeting so many airfields have, I think, been proved fake, because as we say in Sanskrit, pratyaksham kim pramanam. Everybody knows what has happened. Nothing, absolutely nothing has happened. And I think all their missiles have been taken away. So we are very clear that their attempts to target our air stations have actually met with complete failure. Even the attacks today in Jammu city, whatever input I have been a complete failure. all the projectiles, all the firings have been taken on by Indian air defense system. And I think that has taken care of whatever happened. The only place where they have been able to inflict casualties where they have targeted the civilian population in Punch and surrounding areas where the shelling has actually fallen on gurudwaras and cities and villages where houses, residential areas and gurudwara, religious places, etc. have been targeted. So that's the only fact, and that is very clearly evident to everyone and anyone who's observing the narrative which is actually coming up on media. We have seen how Pakistani members of parliament and many journalists have also been scared of what's happening because we saw one of the members of parliament actually literally crying in the parliament while making exhortations as far as what's happening in this conflict.
Indeed, and let me also take a moment to draw your attention, Captain Bansal, to India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri's briefing this evening in New Delhi. He made a number of points, including, if I might mention one or two here. He delved into history to suggest that Pakistan has been lying ever since since its inception in 1947. For instance, it told the United Nations our soldiers were not involved, but as it turned out, eventually their soldiers were involved in the 47 operations. So clearly, Pakistan has been lying at every step of the way since then, number one. Number two, he held out a picture, a photograph of a funeral, a state funeral of sorts, where Pakistani uniformed soldier was standing beside the coffin of a slain terrorist. And this terrorist, we are told, was Hafiz Abdul Rauf, a named terrorist. And that, to my mind, shows the close linkages between the Pakistani army and the terror infrastructure. The Pakistani army aids and abets terrorism, supports terrorists, props up terrorism directed at India in particular. Your thoughts on the linkages that exist between the army, the ISI and the terrorist infrastructure and network in Pakistan as we speak, Captain?
See, it has been a proven fact that Pakistan's security establishment has used these terrorist outfits as an extension of their security establishment. And today's pictures of that funeral are very clear, where you see uniformed soldiers standing side by side with these clerics and offering prayers for the departed soul who were, I think, killed in Indian strike. And obviously, Indian strikes were at these nurseries of terror, these schools of terror, these places where hatred was being bred, hatred was being inculcated. So obviously, those who perished were either terrorists or their close associates. So you can see that Pakistan army and its personnel, by attending this funeral and showing that sort of a sympathy with the family members and other clerics and other terrorists, have clearly indicated that they have very close connects as far as these terrorists and these radical outfits are concerned.
Indeed. And what do you make of the diplomatic outreach by India in the last few hours? In particular, Captain Bansal, we've seen Minister Jaishankar speak with his US counterpart, Italian counterpart and the EU counterpart, and India making it very clear that India will not be the first to initiate or escalate, but if provoked, if threatened, if attacked, India will not shy away from giving Pakistan a befitting response.
See, what we have done is we have actually clarified our position, our stand to the international community very clearly. We've said that we have actually acted with restraint and we are not going to escalate the issue. But the moment any attack or Pakistan takes a step, there will be a retaliation and Pakistan will have to pay for it. I think that's what we are trying to indicate. And I think most Western countries and the global community at large is cognizant of our viewpoint, and they empathize and support our viewpoint that terrorism cannot be accepted and needs to be criticized unequivocally.
Indeed. And if we take a step back and look at the developments and India's response in particular over the last fortnight and more, Captain Bansal, we saw India respond categorically by putting the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, India taking a number of political, diplomatic, economic measures, retaliatory measures in the wake of the Pahalgam attack. India now saying that it will take up the matter with the International Monetary Fund in its meeting on Friday as well. Talk about putting pressure on the FATF to grey list Pakistan all over again. Do you think it is time not to let up on the pressure on Pakistan and to tighten the noose further?
See, as far as the Indus Water Treaty is concerned and holding it in abeyance is concerned, I'm of the firm belief that this single step causes such immense damage to Pakistan that no amount of war, no amount of attacks, no amount of strikes would probably match up to that. So Indus Water Treaty alone is enough to debilitate Pakistan. In addition, of course, what we are doing with the IMF is justified. If IMF actually backs down and doesn't provide funds to Pakistan, you will see their foreign exchange reserves vanish in a short period of time. And if we can further impress upon our friends like Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates to withdraw the funds that they have parked with Pakistan, then you will see that Pakistan would be virtually with a begging bowl. There will be no foreign exchange, there will be no imports feasible, and Pakistan will be back to looking around with a begging bowl. You will see riots and internal disturbances within Pakistan. So Pakistan is in a precarious state, and I think India should pursue all attempts to ensure that IMF, World Bank, ADB, all such organizations do not provide any funds to Pakistan.
Indeed.
At the same time, we should also impress upon European Union that Pakistan has been a state sponsoring terrorism. It's been a state where religious freedoms have not been guaranteed. And as a result, the European Union, which has provided Pakistan with GSP plus status for its textiles exports, should withdraw it. If that is withdrawn, then you will see that Pakistan will start crumbling very fast.
It's interesting you should mention about the situation obtaining domestically inside Pakistan, Captain Bansal. Its economy is in a mess. The Baloch separatists are baying for blood, retaliating against the Pakistani so-called Punjabi Pakistani army in particular. The Pashtuns have their own issues with the Pakistani army and the Pakistani state. The minorities there are in danger. There's a threat to their life every day as we speak. We also seen the world community putting pressure on Pakistan de-escalate. Given the situation obtaining in Pakistan, do you think Asim Muni's future might be in doubt after what he has done now? You think there's every chance of a possible mutiny, him being ousted in the days ahead?
See, firstly, there is no doubt that Pakistan's internal scenario is in a real flux. The Baloch nationalists, the Pakhtun nationalists are all against the Pakistan. Then you have the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is actually operating with support from Afghanistan against the state. In fact, Baloch nationalists have shown, even during these periods of conflict, what they can inflict, what damage they can inflict on Pakistan. Recently, they had actually apprehended a vehicle carrying prisoners from Quetta to Karachi and freed them. They had blocked the highway for a number of hours. They had hijacked a train earlier. They have been targeting security forces and security personnel. On the other hand, if you look at it, Baloch nationalists have actually been incarcerated. The PTM has been declared illegal. All its leaders have been taken into custody. And then TTP, of course, is a ferocious outfit which has been targeting Pakistani security forces and Pakistani state. But that's not all. Even Sindhi nationalists are actually opposing Pakistan. You saw a huge roadblock which they had done against the Cholistan canals. So at this point of time, Pakistan is actually withering away. But having said that, I don't see a mutiny against Asim Munir imminent, but it will happen if Pakistan army suffers a severe setback like they had suffered in 1971. Post 71, there was a virtual mutiny against the chiefs in Pakistan's armed forces, and that sort of a scenario cannot be ruled out. After the setbacks that Pakistan has been facing in the battlefronts, I think a few more setbacks and then you will start seeing mutiny against Asim Munir.
We are approaching the end of our time. So just very quickly, one last time on this broadcast, What should India be thinking tonight as we speak? The armed forces in particular and the government as well. Is this going to be a fight to the finish, that India will not relent and that it will give a befitting response to every Pakistani provocation, come what may?
See, firstly, tonight, armed forces and the government will be on standby because Pakistan has been indulging in acts. I think there needs to be a retaliation. Probably there could be a retaliation against Pakistani actions. But as I said, the policy of the government and policy of the nation is not to escalate. So we will give them a befitting reply and then again give them a clear indication that we are not going to further attack them unless, of course, they provide us with provocation. And I think if they provide us with provocation, we need to have clear goals that what we need to attain, what we are going to do, and that must be very clearly laid out.
All right. On that categorical note, Captain Bansal, may I thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and perspectives with our viewers in India and abroad. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. When you can, do scan the QR code to download it. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.